Hey fellow Trek Chatters, I'm Pit Trekkie and welcome to another episode of Pittsburgh's Trek Chat. So for today's episode, what I want to talk about is the beginning of something that's very exciting in Star Trek, and it was released on Star Trek Day on Monday, September 8th of 2025. It is the audio podcast of Star Trek Con. And to be honest with you, I've been very, very excited about this project coming. It's the first Star Trek podcast audio show that's ever been made, so it makes a little bit of Star Trek history. And it's designed to finally fill in canonically what happened with Khan and Marla MacGyvers and the rest of his followers during those 15 years on Ceti Alpha 5 after Space Seed. So that's what today's episode is going to be about. I want to review the first episode called Paradise. So basically what I'm enjoying about the show so far is obviously we're going to have the big flashback to Ceti Alpha 5, but there's a framing story that goes along with it. So the framing part takes place in 2293, approximately 3 months after Captain Kirk died on the Enterprise B, died in Star Trek Generations. So we start out with a bell ringing in a court hearing, essentially. And there's a character named Dr. Rosalind Lear, who is requesting to go to Ceti Alpha 5 to see if she could find any remnants of log recordings from Marla MacGyvers on the colony. Apparently there was some sort of anonymous source that tipped her off as there was some sort of library or log that she left behind, and actually provided her with some sort of audio which was played in the session. And a lot of the people in that hearing are kind of like, well, I don't understand why you want to do this. Captain Sulu of the Excelsior comes in and talks about how dangerous Khan is, and basically what the court is saying is that there's a possibility that these logs could actually show that Kirk was complicit and purposely left them behind to suffer on Ceti Alpha 5. And Sulu is basically saying, no, I'm not going to let you tarnish his legacy. So what he says is he's willing to let Dr. Lear, he's going to take her on the Excelsior to Ceti Alpha 5, which he does. So when they get to Ceti Alpha 5, she beams down with Ensign Tuvok, and they go into Khan's home, and they find a secret compartment which has log tapes, essentially, of everything that has happened on Ceti Alpha 5 that Lieutenant MacGyvers had recorded on her own. And so they play a small clip of one, which is right around the time that Khan was found by the Reliant, and you can tell he's basically this crazed madman, the way he's talking. So what ends up happening is that we flash back to day one of when the Enterprise left the colony on Ceti Alpha 5. We don't see the Enterprise crew, it just starts after they left, and we find out that they were left on fertile land by an inland sea that's fresh water, so they have plenty of food that they could have. They brought a year's worth of rations. They set up a sophisticated med lab there that one of the people that's there is the doctor, her name's Ursula, actually is going to take care of and work on medical things in that area. So while the guys are setting up temporary shelters and getting tents set up, so we find out that Marla feels a little uncomfortable while sharing Khan's tent. She wants to earn a name for herself with the followers, especially after she betrayed everybody and then they got left on Ceti Alpha 5 as a result. And she actually asks if she could have her own quarters in one of the cargo carriers. And Khan seems kind of reluctant to it, but he feels if it makes her happy, he'll let her do that. We also come across Joaquin, who was his henchman in Space Seed. We find out that he has a son who is Joachim from Star Trek II. And we find out that Joachim is actually considered a half-breed. So we find out that Joaquin actually had a child with a standard regular human. So we find out though that Joaquin is being attacked by other children that are in the colony, and they feel he needs to learn his place. Khan basically says, you know what, he has a lot of respect for the boy and feels that there's a lot of potential in him, so he actually sends him with some of the other child augments to go get food for them in the sea. So we also find Khan getting challenged on Ceti Alpha 5 for the first time by one of his followers named Hugo, who is really angry that he feels that Khan promised them all this luxury and spoils on Earth if they followed him, and then they end up, that doesn't happen, and they escape on the Botany Bay. Then when they get revived on the Botany Bay, and he promises, we're going to take over the Enterprise, and we're going to go all over the galaxy, and we're going to establish our rule. That ended up not happening, and so that's 2 strikes against Khan. So one of Khan's really fierce loyalists, Ivan, basically wants to make an example of Hugo, but Khan feels like, no, we have to depend on each other, we have to work together. But he does take Hugo aside and says, if you ever challenge me again, you'll be banished from this colony. He said, if you want to go and create your own fiefdom out somewhere else, you can do that, but you will be banned from our colony forever. All right? So then that also shows, at one point, Khan actually suggests to Ursula that Marla can help with the medication, the new medications that are in the med bay. So Marla goes there and talks to Ursula, and we find out that the female augments had all of their eggs removed from them at birth, so that way they could never reproduce. That basically was controlling the augments and their ability to procreate. We find out, though, that the men were never castrated or fixed, whatever, because they needed the gametes to keep working on different experiments with other augments. And Ursula basically says, we're trying to reverse the damage done to the women so we can have babies, but frames Khan bringing Marla down as, well, you know what? You're plan B. You're the breeding stock if we can't have any more children. So we find that Marla goes to her cargo bay, and we find out she smuggled a communicator off of the Enterprise. And Khan ends up catching her, and for the first time, he's like, you betrayed me again. And they really get into it, and she says, basically says, I'm not your woman, you only brought me here for breeding stock. You're a weak man because you don't know what true love ever really is. Kind of backing up on that a little bit, Ursula also said when she was breeding stock that Khan and a lot of the male augments took a lot of women to their beds and probably had children with them. So, no matter what, the augment line is still going to be on Earth, but just somewhat diluted. Okay, so Khan ends up back in the cargo bay. Khan ends up taking the communicator from Marla and smashing it. And that's kind of pretty much where it's left off. Hugo goes to look in the mountains. He's going to go with a team of 5 people to get granite for Khan's Colosseum or whatever. And Ivan basically ends up killing Hugo because he says, you needed to convince Khan, but you needed to convince other people too. So he takes care of Hugo, and that's where the episode ends. So I really love this episode. Oh, I'm sorry, there was a little epilogue at the end of the episode. So we go back to SETI Alpha 5. Rosalind Lear is going through the tapes, and Tuvok contacts her and says that we need you to come back here. We can't stay here beyond a number of days. She goes, well, it's going to take months for me to categorize all of these tapes. He goes, you're not going to have several months. We can't stay in orbit here. He goes, come on to the ship and have the Excelsier's computers do it. It'll only take a matter of days. She said that she only trusted her ability to kind of like put them in sequential order. And she asks Tuvok, how many days do they have? The Excelsior is going to leave in 5 days. So that's where the episode ended. I will honestly say I truly loved this. I felt this was very well written. I think the framing story was really good. And we've learned a lot about Khan and his people, essentially, during this time. So first of all, the writing for Khan in this episode was absolutely wonderful. It felt like he was the Khan coming right out of Space Seed. That it was the same writer who created him at this point. You see how much he still feels that he's above humanity, but he also feels because they're above humanity that these little squabbles that they're having with the kids trying to beat down on Joaquin and saying that you need to know your place, that can't be. That everybody's basically equal in their community, and they're going to build this wonderful grand empire. When Hugo comes and is starting and yelling and screaming and questioning Khan and saying how they're basically trapped on this planet with nothing, Khan says where you see, dirt, or where you see, ground, or you just see granite, I see what's going to build our community, what's going to build our Colosseums, what's going to build our empire. So he's got this beautiful, grandiose plan of everything. He sees it as a great opportunity where a lot of the other colonists probably feel that they're stuck, you know, on a desert island, basically, and fending from and creating from nothing. But Khan's got all these great plans, and he sees a bigger picture. And we know that that's obviously going to change after SETI Alpha 6 explodes and the planet's laid waste. So, but that idealism of Khan was there. Also, the fact that he was very tough and he demanded loyalty from his people. That was very key, as well as it was in Spacey, that he's the leader. He loves his people, but he's in charge, and that's not going to be challenged. Marla MacGyver's was a totally big shocker in this one. So the way they had her basically in Spacey was she was just kind of scared of Khan and subservient, and she was just enthralled by the history that he was and what she was going to learn from him. But he also, you can see, scared her to the point where she actually betrayed Kirk and the crew to do his bidding, even though she did turn on him later on. But in this version, she was a lot tougher as a person. She basically said, I'm not your woman. These people, I need them to earn respect for me on their own, not by you commanding it. She even goes so far as to say, I'm going to... you're a small man because you've never loved before. I mean, to have anybody else challenge Khan in that way probably wouldn't have gone over very well. There probably would have been punishment. So their love story, that it seemed like they were totally in love with each other, apparently wasn't that like that when their relationship first started. Okay, and probably at this point they're not even married. So it's going to be interesting in the other episodes seeing how they finally build the love for each other that we finally see when we see Khan in Star Trek II and he's grieving her loss and he's gone mad because of the death of his wife. So they did a really nice job. So it's going to be interesting to see how this version of Marla is going to play out. Joaquin, we find out, actually had a regular human, I don't know if it was a wife or at least a spouse or a lover. Her name was Talia, and that's how we find out who Joaquin was. There was for years, for 40 years, fans were wondering if Joaquin was actually Khan's son. Well, we find out officially now in canon that he's actually Joaquin's son. And to find out that he's a half-breed, I hate using that term, it just sounds rude. But he's half human, half augmented human. So, and to see that Khan has a very strong love for him so early on, that he trusted him with the other augments on this mission, and he comes back with tons of fish, and he even uses Khan's sword to Khan loans to him, and brings back all these spoils. So that's really great. So it was wonderful to learn a lot about him. Well, we also at least had our villain at this point. We had Hugo sounded like he was going to be the villain of the story, and that it was probably going to be some sort of uprising or whatever. But if Hugo was killed by Ivan, maybe Ivan, as much as he loves Khan, ends up turning into the villain. Maybe Khan ostracizes him or does something that finally turns Ivan against him, and Ivan's going to get other augments against him, and it's going to turn into this big battle. Who knows? I mean, I'm kind of thinking about the Greg Cox Terrain in Hell story, where that's something similar to that happened. So I'm wondering if that's what's going to happen in here as well. All right. We also find out that Kirk actually did give the colony a fighting chance to live. They gave them a year's worth of rations. They also got food left over from the Botany Bay. I don't think that they actually brought the Botany Bay with them. They might have. They didn't say that in the episode. But they did bring supplies from it. So they had a good fighting chance. They had a whole bunch of advanced equipment to be able to help with them trying to get their biology going so the women can actually have children with the male augments again. Marla was able to talk about some of the medications that were left behind. Marla had stuff where she can do historical tapes on the colony. One thing that did surprise me, though, and this answered a question that I had for many, many years. In Star Trek II, Khan says to Chekhov, Admiral Kirk never bothered to check on our progress. So I always wondered, did Kirk say he was going to? Or did Khan just assume that was going to happen? The way that Marla said Captain Kirk is never coming back made me wonder, did Kirk actually make it very clear, you guys are on your own? Okay, the way that Khan's so vengeful in Star Trek II made me think that Kirk had some sort of promise, or that at least Khan thought out of basic decent humanity, you'd come check on us once a year, twice a year, whatever. Okay, but maybe Kirk never meant to come back. They were on their own, and Khan, maybe that's part of what turned Khan so crazy, is he had this ideal that Kirk would have actually come back out of basic decency, and he never did. and then that led to the death of his colonists and of Marla as well. All right, so basically Kirk gave them a fighting chance to live on this planet. So those are some of the basic things that I thought were very, very interesting about this episode. Now, going back to the framing story, having George Takei back as Sulu and Tim Russ back as Tuvok, that brought a lot of canon stability and you know, timeline. It just made it all fit. It was really good. This Rosalind Lear is a very interesting character. What's her role in all this? Why is she so adamant about knowing the history of SETI Alpha 5? Does she want to destroy Kirk? Does this committee want to destroy Kirk? And who is this anonymous source that gave her information gave her the clips of Marla's recordings on SETI Alpha 5? That's a big old question mark that we're hoping we're going to find out here in the next 7 episodes. But I really think that they did a really amazing job actually getting the feel of Khan, and MacGyver's, the actor and the actress playing the two characters, did a really wonderful job. It sucks you into the story very, very quickly. The sound effects are really good. It was nice hearing original series things, sound effects in the episode that tied it all into original series canon. It was really wonderful. It was well written and well thought out, and it opens up a lot of questions about what's going to be coming. Oh, the last thing that I want to talk about that was surprising is that in Space Seed, when they found the Botany Bay, there were 72 canisters that were still alive. And they say 20 or 30 of those were women. I can't remember. They never said that any of them were children. We find out that actually some of the augments that were on board the Botany Bay not only were children, but they also brought augment embryos with them as well. So that adds to the lore of what was going on SETI Alpha 5. It wasn't just adults, which I always assumed it was 50 males and 20-some women. So that added a little bit of extra layer, which again made this episode so interesting. So I cannot wait for episode 2. And they're going to be every Monday, starting with, again, Monday, September 8th going through Monday, November 3rd of this year. So I would like to know what your thoughts are of episode 1 of Star Trek Khan, Paradise. Please type them down below. I would love to respond to them. I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Obviously, you can follow Pittsburgh's Trek Chat. Just go to YouTube, type in Pittsburgh's Trek Chat, and it'll take you to my channel. You can watch previous episodes of the show. You can follow the show on Facebook, facebook.com/Pittsburgh's Trek Chat. You can also follow the show on X at PGH Trek Chat. I'm looking forward to the next episode, and until then, may yins live long and prosper.